Hello, and welcome to this evening's webinar, Introducing the PRISM Wealth-Building Process Academy, led by Charles Rotblut and Peter Nguyen. My name is Jenna Brashear, and I'm your host for tonight. I want to remind all of our webinar viewers that AAII is a nonprofit educational group and is not a financial advisor, and thus is not able to give personal advice. Every investor is different. That's why our goal with each broadcast and article is to educate you on how to make better financial decisions. A handout of the presentation is available under the Handouts section of your GoToWebinar control panel, located on the right-hand side of the screen. If you have questions for our speaker, please submit them using the questions section of your GoToWebinar control panel. Our moderator will select questions submitted and read them aloud for the benefit of all watching the broadcast. Questions that are not selected for the broadcast will be reviewed and addressed afterwards. If you experience any issues with the audio or video of the webinar, please consult the instructions on how to change your device's settings or consult the GoToWebinar website for support at gotowebinar.com. And a friendly reminder that this presentation is recorded and a replay of the webinar will be available tomorrow on AAII's YouTube channel, along with links to this evening's handouts and to some of the resources discussed. The American Association of Individual Investors is an independent nonprofit corporation formed in 1978 for the purpose of assisting individuals in becoming effective managers of their own assets through programs of education, information, and research. Now please sit back, relax, and enjoy this live presentation. Take it away, Charles and Peter.
Thank you, Jenna. And I know a lot of you out there are still trickling in, but good evening. We're flattered that you're here with us tonight instead of watching Squid Games. My name is Pete Nguyen. I'm the Director of Marketing at the Association, and most of you already know Charles Rotblut. He's the editor of the AAII Journal and the architect of the PRISM Wealth-Building Process that we're here to share with you tonight. In the past, I have described Charles as being the Carl Sagan of investing, in that Carl Sagan had his TV show Cosmos, where he had the ability to take complicated information and make it easy to understand and not scary. And Charles has this very folksy, very approachable approach that is appealing to a lot of people. I don't know what you would call myself. Am I the Quentin Tarantino of investing, where I take a concept that maybe perhaps connects some pop culture references to it? But now that we're all here and acquainted, before Charles does his presentation, I want to briefly explain the legacy of education that AAII has produced in its over 40 years of experience. So the AAII Journal, of which Charles is the editor of, provides excellent education about the latest investing techniques. But the new PRISM wealth building process is a framework that will allow individual investors to apply this education. And the AAII community that is so tightly integrated with PRISM is going to help investors think more deeply and objectively about their decisions. So I'm really excited about introducing the man with the vision behind this process, Charles Rotblut. Throughout this presentation, if you have questions for Charles, please feel free to ask them through the control panel of GoToWebinar, and we'll get to them as much as we can throughout the presentation. I'm acting as moderator, so I'll be looking at these questions as they come in. But Charles, our viewers have been seeing a lot of you lately. You've been a busy man with hosting a virtual conference, and now this new project that's called PRISM. Charles, now part of your PRISM wealth building process is prioritizing your goals. Well, what's your goal for this evening?
My goal is to get people really excited about the PRISM Academy and hopefully have them come join us. Peter's being modest. He's played a key role in helping us develop community, has given me some great input regarding PRISM along the way. But this really is a member benefit, and we really did create it for all of you watching here. And one of the things I want to emphasize as I go through this isn't us saying, do steps X, Y, and Z. This is us really giving you a framework in which you can create your own personalized plan. So we're going to talk to you today about the PRISM Academy. We're going to talk to you about community, but both will really work if you get involved with them and you get engaged with them. They really are designed for the benefit of everybody watching here and the broader AAII membership as a whole.
Oh, great. That sounds exciting. So Charles, if you want to start up your presentation, and we'll have a go at it.
That sounds great. Thanks, Peter. Let me make myself the presenter here. All right. There we go. We're going here. Okay. So as I said, we talked about PRISM a second ago. So what PRISM is, it's a framework for really aligning your goals and your investing decisions. So all of you are either saving, have accumulated wealth, and perhaps spending it down in retirement. Uh, Regardless of where you're at in your life stage, chances are you have something you want to do with your money. There's some reason why money is important to you. And we want you to use that reason as to why money matters to you and make that the driver for all your investment decisions. I'm a big believer that when people have a reason for doing something or a purpose, they're more likely to be disciplined, they're more likely to be engaged. And PRISM is really a framework for aligning your goals with your investing decisions. There's 5 steps of PRISM, and they're really designed to empower you. And if you work through the PRISM process, you'll not only realize it works really well for investing, but the basic framework applies to a lot of different situations. So it's really about assigning the reason why you're investing and letting that determine all of your other decisions versus, say, a bottom-up approach where you're just saying, well, tell me the best stock, tell me the best mutual fund. Well, the best stock or the best mutual fund is generally the one that has the best performance right now. And what's happening right now may have really little to do with your goals, especially if your goals are 10, 20, 30 years out in the future. What you're hearing on CNBC or what you're seeing in the investment media really has little to do with your goals long term. Now, you might have short-term goals, in which case, again, what's happening in the stock market on a day-to-day basis may not apply if your goal is really short-term. So this whole process is really really trying to get you to think about, why am I investing? Why does money matter to me? What am I trying to do? And have that drive your decisions. And I think you find that if you go through this process, you'll have a lot more clarity in terms of making your investment decisions. You'll also feel like you have a lot more control over what you're trying to do. And one of the great things about PRISM is that it's a very personalized process. We're giving you the guardrails to go between, but we're not telling you what type of road to take, how far you should drive, what kind of car you should take. We're just saying, stay within these lines and move forward, and you'll be very happy with the results. So PRISM itself, I've been talking about this in the journal for now several months. I started last year, actually. This is an article we have in the October issue about monitoring your portfolio with the PRISM process. So some of you might be familiar with it. You might be familiar with the early iteration of it, which we call the AAII way. We've since evolved it to be the PRISM Wealth-Building Process. So this is something we have been developing really since the start of the pandemic. We started having discussions really about this in December of 2019, January 2020, and it really came about thinking about all the education we provide with AAII, and how can we help people crystallize it? How can we help our members take all this information about how to invest and personalize it and turn it into a plan they can use to be really successful with their own portfolios. And so what we came up with was really 5 key steps. So the word PRISM is an acronym. Yes, it is a piece of glass. If you hold it in a light, it breaks the light into different colors. But it also breaks the investing process down into different steps. And there's 5 steps you see in front of you. It's prioritizing your goals. What are the key goals you're trying to accomplish? It's recognizing your risk tolerance and your allocation. And your risk tolerance might be more or less than someone else, but that combined with your goals drives your allocation. What's your time frame, and what's your ability psychologically and financially to tolerate swings in your portfolio? Identifying your investment management preferences. How do you want to invest? Do you want to be in complete control of your investments? Do you want to perhaps employ a fund manager, either an ETF manager or a mutual fund manager? Do you need assistance with certain tasks? Or perhaps you want to work with a financial advisor, but you want to be clear on what you want to be, how you want your money to be managed, and what goals you're trying to accomplish. And from that, then you can get into the process of selecting your investments. So once you decide your goals, your risk tolerance, your allocation, and your investment management process, suddenly you took this universe of about 30,000 stocks, mutual funds, and ETFs. And by the way, I didn't get into the thousands of bonds on top of it. You've suddenly taken this huge, really pile of hay and narrowed it down to a really small bale where you can find those needles that are really the investments that are appropriate for you. And after you've done all that, then it simply comes down to monitoring your portfolio, your allocation, your progress, and your life stages. And so to really kind of show you visually how this works, here's a flow chart. So it starts with that top where PRISM really is a goals-driven process, and it flows through again to your allocation, to your risk tolerance, to your investment management process, to selecting and managing your investments, to finally where you're monitoring your portfolio. And the monitoring your portfolio really comes down to, is your allocation where it should be? If not, go take a look at your securities, figure out how you need to adjust your portfolio. Maybe you trim some holdings, maybe you direct new contributions to certain asset classes, and then also progress towards your goals and changes in your life stage. Maybe a goal you had no longer applies because something's happened in your life. Maybe something positive's happened in your life, or maybe you have a new child or grandchild, and that causes you to reassess your goals. Maybe you had a change in your life stage where you were working and now you're transitioning towards retirement. Or maybe it's a change in your health status. Whatever it is, this monitoring process really comes down to, is my allocation still where it should be? Am I making the progress I expected towards my goals? And has there something that's changed in my life that would cause me to reassess my goals and go back through the whole PRISM process? So it's really designed to be an ongoing process, not something you do once, you're done, you stick it in the drawer. It really is designed to be a living document, something you use throughout your career, throughout your investing lifetime. And perhaps you show your spouse, your heirs, saying, this is how I'm managing my money. This is why I'm managing my money. And should something happen where I'm unable to take over my finances, here's my plan to help you understand what I was doing. And by having this plan, you're actually empowering those you trust to step in when you're unable to manage your portfolio, to understand the decisions you made, and hopefully empower them to make the decisions you would like them to make. So again, this is a lifelong process. And once you build it, you can continue using and refining as your life stages and as your goals change. And I talked about this actually recently in the Wall Street Journal about how this is applied, because this really is a process you can use regardless of life stage and regardless of goals. So this was in the Wall Street Journal. At least I know it was online this morning. I'm not sure about the paper, but I wrote about millennials and how they can actually save for different goals. So, and our Gen Zers. So say, you're young, you're starting your career. Perhaps you want to buy a house. Perhaps you should start saving for retirement. And you never invested before. Well, it's a big challenge. Well, if you start using the PRISM process, you can start thinking about it. Well, one goal I have is to start building emergency savings. So then low risk tolerance, more conservative allocation, because if you need money to pay perhaps your car repairs, perhaps a new security deposit on your house, or perhaps you have an emergency medical a medical incident happen, you want to have that money available to you. So that's one pot of money you send in one account. But then you also realize that, hey, I'm young. I should start saving for retirement now because I have all these years ahead and I really need to maximize my growth. So in that case, you start thinking about allocating it very aggressively. And you go in your 401k and you have a huge allocation to stock. So this is a great example of how PRISM can work, where you have different goals and you have different allocations tied to each goal, but you know exactly how the money is being invested. So your short-term savings, that's money you're setting aside for a quote unquote rainy day. So it's there when you need it, versus your long-term money. Well, you shouldn't touch it because you're going to need that money when you're 70, when you're 80, hopefully 90 or 100. So you need to treat it differently. And you need to set it aside where you don't look at it, but you just keep contributing and you invest it very aggressively. So it's kind of a tangible example about how PRISM can work. And obviously everybody watching is at different life stages, and not everyone watching obviously is a millennial or a Gen Zer, but it's a good example about how PRISM is really adaptable to wherever you are in your life stage and whatever your goals are. So we want to hear from you. Jenna, I believe we have a question we were going to ask members about goals. Jenna, do we have the screen up?
Yep, we do, Charles.
Okay, great. Sorry, I can't see it on my screen. So we want to hear about you and about, about your, whether you have a plan towards investing.
And so it looks like the options are, well, the question is, do you have a formalized investment plan? The options are, yes, I have a formalized written investment plan. Yes, I have a plan, but it's not formalized or written. Not yet, but I want to create one. Or no, I am not interested in creating a plan.
I'll allow you
So,
to give me the results. So I have my PowerPoint slides up.
and so Charles, it's looking like the poll has not been closed, but it's looking like 25% of our attendees are saying that yes, they have a formalized written investment plan. So good for you. 49% saying yes, I have a plan, but it's not formalized or written. And then a quarter of you is saying not yet, but I want to create one, and 2% are saying that you're not interested in creating a plan, that'd be interesting to us about why you feel that you would want to have a plan.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear from members about that as well. But yeah, interesting breakdown. I myself, PRISM actually came from my own experience partially. Uh, I've always been someone who likes writing things down, tracking things, and really just having those rules. I'm a big believer in really having rules. In fact, one of my favorite books is the Checklist Manifesto, where they go into points of checklists. So I really think having a written plan can really help. And it's an interesting mix. It doesn't surprise me, but it is interesting. And certainly, those of you who don't agree with having a plan, we'd love to hear from you. But those of you who have a plan, we'd like to also hear about your experience, why you have it, how you use it. Peter will be talking about our community, our new community soon, and it'll give you a good forum for you to interact with us. But let's continue the presentation. But thanks for taking part of the poll and certainly ask questions. We're always happy to hear from members and answer them. So I just said a second ago that I use a PRISM-like approach. In my investor updates, I actually talk about my 403B about twice a year. And one of the things I actually do is my 403B is similar to a 401k. AAII is a nonprofit. So our retirement plan actually falls under a different part of the tax code. But one of the things I do is I rebalance. I'm a big believer in taking the asset allocation and moving it back to its targets. And so one of the things I do, I actually have a disciplined plan where I only look twice a year, and I really look to see if my allocations are off target by 5 percentage points or more. So I have 5 funds, 5 different asset groups, and I just look to see if evenly divided. I look to see if they're on track with each other. And I've been doing this for years. And what I found for me personally is that rebalancing helps me psychologically, because when the market is volatile, it moves up or down, I don't worry about it. I don't get overly excited. I don't get overly nervous, because I know if my portfolio is going to stray too far off target, I'm able to actually step in. I know I'll have a point where I'll be able to make adjustments. The other thing is, personally, I'm a big believer in process over results. I'm the type of person, I understand that there's things I can't control. I can't control what the market's going to do. I can't control, if odd random events happen, but I can control my decisions. And as long as I make the best possible decisions I can, I'll get the highest return possible. So I focus on constantly trying to save more, on trying to manage my portfolio properly, on trying to make those good decisions. And that helps me being a disciplined investor. And if I do everything right, then the outcome should follow. Now, could bad things happen and I have to adjust at some point in the future? Absolutely. But in the meantime, I know I'm controlling what I can control. And so that's part of PRISM is letting you think about, okay, what do I want to control? And what am I going to do to help myself make those decisions and stay on track with those decisions? And
Charles,
so one of
had a, this is a personal question here that I think maybe a few of them might be asking themselves. For the 24% of the attendees that said that they have a formalized written investment plan, well, what do you recommend that they do next? What is their next move after that? How do you enter the PRISM wealth building process if you feel that perhaps you're doing 80%, 90% of the right things that you're supposed to be doing in the best practices?
That's a great question. And what I would say is go through it and go through. It's a thought exercise and go through and because it's goals based. Start thinking about your goals. Start thinking about your risk tolerance, and you know your plan's working right. But then this is really a chance to give your plan a second check and a different way of looking at it and asking yourself as you go through the PRISM process is why have my plan still valid? Does it make sense, or should I tweak something on it? Now you might go through the whole PRISM process and realize everything with my plan is exactly right. But you might also go through it and PRISM might actually prompt you to think about things that perhaps you haven't thought about before, or perhaps might prompt you to reassess certain parts of your plan that you haven't done before. And maybe you haven't looked at your plan for a while, or maybe you've done it recently, and maybe there's some steps when you created your plan that PRISM either causes you to assess in a different way, or maybe PRISM brings up different questions that you may not have thought about. So don't change your plan just for the sake of changing it, but consider PRISM to be a gut check. Is everything in your plan what it should be? Are there holes on it? Are there some parts that maybe maybe I want to tweak this or reassess this one part?
Charles, we have a attendee here who has a question. It's from Dilbert. His question is, why are you calling it Academy? What's behind that word?
Well, that's a great question, Dilbert, and I'm actually going to get into it. So the whole reason is Academy, we're actually going to provide you more in-depth look at PRISM and really go through the education of each component, each step of PRISM, explain to you why it's in there, but not only explain why it's in here, but really go into more detail about why things are important, what components of each you need to think about, and really provide a lot of investment education. So it's not just, here's the 5 steps, go walk you through them. We're actually going to go really into the why and what you need to understand about each concept. So you really will get a pretty in-depth investment education into this. So we're going to take a lot of this is going to come from things we've covered previously in the journal, but we're really combining it in one place. So it really is an educational experience. Peter, any other questions, or should I go forward?
There's a couple questions, but you go ahead, Charles. You're good to go.
So, yeah, so let me go more into Dilbert. I think you'll find some good information about this. So the PRISM Wealth-Building Academy. We actually just launched it. We pushed it live on the site last week, kind of kept things quiet to make sure we got some of the initial bugs out of the way. But then yesterday, many of you all probably got an email about announcing this. And so we're running this on our community platform. And so when you go into PRISM, we're dividing the PRISM process. So there's 5 steps of the PRISM process. And we're actually dividing each step into separate lessons. So you can see with step 1, where we actually have 3 lessons up right now. We have more coming. So as I just said, we're actually going to deep drill down in each step. Really kind of going to a closer look at each step and explain to you what you might need to consider, why certain parts of why these steps are actually the way they are, but also how each step actually applies to the investing process. And the way you're able to get to the PRISM Academy is by going to Learn and Plan. So if you look on the AAII website, you'll see on the very top where it says Planning. You can go right to that, or you can get to the AAII Community. But let me actually get up here. I'm actually going to switch here to my browser. So you'll see right here, I said, it's right here on the Planning. So when you click on Planning, right here on the top navigation, you'll see right here in the intro, you actually also see the different steps of PRISM. So when you click on this link or any of these, you'll actually be taken over to the PRISM Academy. And I'm going to actually show you I said the web page is clicked up in case my internet starts getting a little funky. We're good. So I'll actually take this main page here. This is the actual PRISM Academy. And you'll see here where we have the initial post on there. We're going to keep adding to this. So each of these are the lessons. You actually want you to go through each lesson individually because they're all cumulative. They all build on one another. So each step we're going to start with a lesson, explain to you, overview of the lesson, and then kind of go into more detail. So you can see here where we talk about why do you start with your goals and what are your goals. So again, providing more in-depth education about why these things matter. And so what this is really it's a multimedia interactive course. So it's not just here's some text, read it. Even though it's self-directed, we're actually each lesson's going to have videos. So right here, it's a video of me. Sorry about the little network error showing up on my screen here, but it's a lesson of me actually talking about video of me actually talking about each lesson. Why is it important? What do you need to actually learn about it? And you'll have the chance to actually watch the video. You'll have the chance. We'll actually ask you to do certain things, but we'll also ask you to comment on it. So you can, what did you learn? We'll ask you to think about certain things. When we go with goals, think about your goals. We'll ask you to think about what goals are important to you. Why are you saving with money? Why are you saving money? What do you hope to do with it? And then we'll start going into the future talking about how to actually prioritize your goals. I'm going to refresh my screen here. But we're also going to have worksheets. So these are actually going to be worksheets you can use to actually work through the PRISM process. So this is our prioritizing your goals worksheet. And throughout step one, we're going to help you fill this out. So the goal of this worksheet is to actually have you write down your goals, how far away those goals are. So consider the timing, but also consider duration. So the reason why we're doing this is to give you some simple examples. We go with retirement. Where I use the example of a Gen Zer, retirement might be 30 years away. Well, that's how far until their goal is going to be reached. But say you're 65 and you're retiring this year. Well, how many years away is your goal of paying for retirement? Well, guess what? It's zero. It's here and now. But then there's a second component to it, spending duration. So if you think of goals, it's how long will it be till I reach my goal? Well, in this case, we're talking about retirement. So how many years till I retire? And then with a retirement, you could potentially have this long tail. So hopefully on the day that you're retired, you're blessed with not only longevity, but the health to enjoy that longevity. So you're retired at age 65 right now, you could be looking at 30 or more years of retirement, particularly if you're blessed with good health, you have good genes. So it's not just when do I reach my goal, but then once I reach my goal, how long am I going to spend on it? Is it a one-time goal where, hey, you know what? I'll use an example. When I was driving down to our conference a couple of weeks ago, I passed a couple looked like brand new Maserati SUVs, and maybe that's your goal. And I don't know how much a Maserati SUV costs, but I'm guessing it's a pretty large sum. And to me, that's your goal. That's a one-time expenditure. But if your goal is retirement, you could be looking at a long horizon, or perhaps your goal is to leave money for your heirs. Well, then you might have a long period, hopefully, before your estate gets passed along to your heirs. But then once your heirs receive it, if it's an inherited IRA or an inherited Roth IRA, well, then they conceivably leave it in an account for 10 years before the IRS has them take it out. But even then, they might have a long spending duration after they get out of the IRA before they need to spend it. So we want you to consider two components of the goals, because it's not like I reach my goal, hey, I'm done. There could be this long tail. So we're going to walk you through a lot of these considerations in the PRISM Academy so you understand what's going on. But we also want you to interact. We want you to share the experience of what you're learning, what you think about the lessons. And we're also going, on top of all this, we're going to have office hours where I'm going to jump into the community and have discussions with you. So, if you have questions for me, hey, Charles, I don't understand this. Charles, why did you do this? Have you thought about that? You'll have that opportunity to give me feedback and talk directly to me as well as some of my colleagues. So we want this to be an interactive process. But the big thing is, even though we're calling this academy, I want to raise, it's a really important point. This is more than just education. when you're finished, you will have your own financial plan. So this is not just about us giving you education. You're actually, throughout this process, are going to build your own wealth building plan. And when you're done, you're going to have this tangible plan you can use continuously through the rest of your life, share it with your heirs. This is going to be your plan, not ours. We're going to give you all the tools to build it with, but it's still going to be your plan. And that's the real beauty of this PRISM Wealth-Building Academy. Is not only are you going to gain more knowledge, but you're going to have something you can actually use once you're done. And so our goal is we're going to release new lessons every week. And approximately once a month, we're going to get into a new step. It's going to depend on each step. For instance, I'm working on step 2, which deals with allocation, deals with risk tolerance. There's a lot to consider. So that might take more than a month to actually get through step 2. But the goal is that every week, you're going to have new content appearing in the PRISM Academy, new content for you to engage with, to learn from, to continuously build your own financial plan. So I really hope you take advantage of it. And Pete, I'll turn it over to you because this is all housed on our new AI community. And there's a lot more to this community than just the PRISM Wealth Building Academy. And I think it'd be good for our members to know about how much they're actually getting from community and what's going to be available to them.
Absolutely, Charles. This is a hidden gem that I want to make sure everyone is aware of. Charles, if you could actually click on the second tab on your browser, I just want to make sure that is kind of front and center so our viewers can see this. Before I get into it, really quickly, Charles, Andrew here has a question about the worksheet that you had open, and his comment was, how can you answer the estimated cost column for retirement that seems like black magic and is really open-ended? What do you do about that field?
Yeah, that's really a tough question because everyone's retirement's going to be different. And you obviously, a lot of numbers that people give to you will say percent of your ending salary. Well, it's a rule of thumb. You don't know what your ending salary is going to be. Hopefully, it's going to be a lot larger than it is when you're young. But one thing you can think about is, okay, what are my expenses right now? What am I spending? Living expenses. What am I spending on commuting? So kind of think about what your lifestyle is right now. In regards to your ages, you can just kind of increase it for inflation. So figure out the number of years till you retire, and then just use 3% inflation. And the reason why I say 3% inflation is that's been a historical average over the last approximately 80, 90 years. So could inflation be more or less in the future? Absolutely. We don't know. But if you kind of estimate what your living expenses might be, and then use that 3% number, that'll at least give you a ballpark. And will your actual of what you need each year in retirement. Now, will that be the exact number? No. But your goal is to try and get it close. At least try and get yourself in the ballpark. So that gives you a starting point to work off of. But the reality is, and I'm sure those of the people who are retired right now who are watching will tell us that their living expenses might actually be different than they expected. But that's kind of a good rule of thumb you can use to try to at least get a ballpark number. And of course, there's several calculators online you could also use as well that might give you different numbers as well.
And I see you've got an examples tab on that spreadsheet as well. So I imagine that's got some, just so people can visualize what one would look like when you've completed it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in this case, I used 2 fictional investors. One's Elizabeth, so a Gen Zer who's just starting out. And then I had a retired couple, Bob and Jane. In their case, they're fortunate enough to actually have Social Security and pensions covering their retirement living expenses. But it gives people a tangible idea of how things can actually be filled out. And the reason we have priority, I'll just add to this, is that push came to shove, which goal do you have to meet and which goals might be really nice to meet, but if push came to shove, you'd be willing to sacrifice them.
Great. Well, I think we can talk about community now. I'm very excited to share this key aspect of the PRISM wealth building process, along with this member benefit that all of you should take advantage of. So Charles, if you can then just share your browser, just show this.
Okay, absolutely. Look at that. We go this. Okay, got it.
Okay, so some of the concepts that Charles has described may on the surface seem like common sense. But if investing was so easy, then why do so many of us make unforced errors? So the key to make the concepts behind PRISM work is to recognize that it's a culture and a discipline. While you can benefit from PRISM without actually interacting with all the members out there, we feel that member interaction is a key to making it successful. So what do I mean when I say that PRISM is a culture and a discipline? Well, if you think about it, a Peloton is not an exercise bike with a TV connected to it. It's an experience. It's having a vision of your future self and pulling your current self into that future. It's making that commitment, measuring your progress, and interacting with, and sometimes being in friendly competition with your friends so that you all can help each other make it to the finish line together. The saying is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, take your friends. Well, that applies to investing as well. And with PRISM, what you're getting here is more than the flow chart, as Charles has said. It's more than a list of rules or a bunch of videos or a bunch of articles or a bunch of worksheets. What you're getting is a mental model with all the tools and techniques that are repeatable and believable. And they are repeatable and believable because you'll have access to members that are applying this process to their own lives. So the community is an interactive online platform that connects members with one another and engages them in weekly discussions related to various steps and lessons within this PRISM wealth building process. As Charles has shared, members are then directed to the community from the planning page from AAII.com. However, you can also access the community through the community tab of our website, or simply go to community@aai.com, and you'd be given the ability to view other communities. Now, we've started a handful, such as income investing and stock screening and retirement withdrawals, but our current focus is the PRISM wealth building process community, and we'll just build on top of that as we go on. So the way that this is all going to work is, as Charles has mentioned, every month we're going to release a new step of the course, and within each step there are going to be lessons. So roughly once a month for the next 5 months, we'll be releasing new courses, but every week we're going to release new lessons that reveal a little bit more about what you can be doing. So we're basically taking a journey together. We are, as well as you, about what it is to follow this process, and we're going to continue this forever and get better at it, and you'll get better at investing as well. So obviously with a message board like this is essentially what this is. You can connect with other members in real time on that secure platform, and then you can share your financial wisdom and experiences from others. The other nice thing that you'll get out of this is daily digest emails that summarize conversations that others are having. You can adjust that obviously through email preferences through your profile, and you can leave or join any community as you wish. But if there is a topic that you're interested in, you can simply join the community. So through the PRISM wealth building process, prioritizing your goals community, we started that, and the entrance point was through the planning page. But there are other communities that you can join as well, and there's simply a join button there that you can click on, and that means that you are part of that community. And so by joining that community, what that means is then you have access to all of the conversations that's going on, and you'll be alerted to any conversation going on through email. Now, future plans, this is critical to PRISM, because if we want this to be a process that resonates, we have to make sure that discussions are thriving there and relevant to your financial planning needs. So we're going to put a lot of work in making it interesting. Charles mentioned office hours. This morning we were half jokingly calling it a brunch club, but that's going to be a great opportunity for you to ask Charles questions based on what you're going through as an investor and what part of the process needs clarification. we're going to be adding additional communities on a variety of topics that investors are interested in, and we're going to heavily integrate it throughout AAII.com. So, for example, there is a community out there that we've created called Allocation Strategies. Shortly in the near future, on all of our asset allocation articles, along with the asset allocation models page, we're going to start embedding conversations throughout those pages to cross-link, and so you'll have an awareness of interesting conversation going on within that topic. And we'll do that through, with multiple categories of topics. So it'll be a very rich experience for you when you go in there and you're consuming content. You'll get kind of a sense of other thoughts going on, and you'll jump into the community to participate if you wish. You know, along with that, you know, we're going to do fun things like contests. You're going to have the ability to earn badges by doing certain activities. So those are all things that are going to motivate you and inspire you to contribute and contribute to the wisdom of our community, as well as you know, if you don't want to do that, then you're free to just, you know, kind of sit back and watch. We know that 90% of people who follow communities are lurkers. They just kind of go and read other people's comments. That's perfectly fine. So so that's community in a nutshell. You know, Charles has on the screen up there, you know, it's a pretty intuitive environment. If you clicked on Explore, that will give you a listing of the communities. If you clicked on Participate, then you can go ahead and start posting things immediately. And yeah, Charles, you'll want to click on the second pull down where it says communities to which I belong or can join.
Let's get back to this.
Yep.
Explore.
And if you clicked on all communities.
Oh, ask me to log in. There we go.
Yep. And so you'll see a listing. So right now we've got a half dozen communities that we've started up. And then Charles, now when you click on PRISM prioritizing your goals.
Well, you said someone joined 2 minutes ago. Great.
You'll see that the default view here is the community home tab. So you'll see some pertinent information, but every right now under the PRISM Academy box on the left, top left of the page, then you see the welcome video as well as the 3 lessons that we've released. We're going to be releasing another lesson next week, and we'll keep adding to that, and you'll follow along and contribute. And now, Charles, if you click on lesson 1. And so I believe the exercise in this simple lesson was to think of 3 goals and how choosing the right investments would make those objectives a reality. So if you want to kind of scroll down, you know, really briefly, they'll get a sense of what that all looks like. So, you know, pretty simple, pretty intuitive. You know, if you'd like to create your own post, and then at the very bottom of the page, then you can hit reply or post, and you'll be able to share your own thoughts there. You're obviously also given the ability to manage your preferences. So if you have any privacy concerns, you can manage it through there. You can manage your information on your profile. If you want to get creative, you can create your own profile picture. But there are numerous things that you can manage there to your preference. If you have any feedback or concerns about the way that this community is designed, you know, we just launched this last week, so we are trying to make adjustments based on feedback that we're getting. Feel free to let us know. But we're very excited about this. You know, we were very pleased by the early response. We sent this email announcing this member benefit yesterday, and so already we've got almost 500 followers to this community. So so that's a great start, and we welcome more people to join. I'm going to end, I guess, my part on the community on this. Every individual out there is looking to connect and share their story. And AAII needs to be the book that they write it on. So what we are creating is just a way for you, a process that you can document your journey through the community. And that's gonna, we hope, motivate you and keep you disciplined, and keep you, make sure that you are on track for your goals, and that you're making decisions that are objective and that follow the process. I also want to encourage your children to try this. You know, PRISM is beneficial to investors of all skill levels, of course, but perhaps with communities like Reddit out there, where they're talking things like chicken tenders and they're just using these kind of strange words, perhaps the group of people that this process is going to create discipline for the most is young people. So if you have children, grandchildren, neighbors that you think will benefit from a process like this, I recommend that you bring them on board and have them take a look at this thing. So Charles, unless you have more you want to share, we do have a few questions here, so I can kind of go through them if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's see here. So Neil has a question. He asks, how do you translate goals into specific investment decisions?
Well, that's great. That's actually through the PRISM process, and we'll walk you through it. But it really comes down to, once you have your goals, you can start assessing your risk tolerance from, how far away your goal is, how much non-portfolio wealth do you, or how much wealth period do you have to cover the goal right now, or income. That helps to drive your asset allocation decision. And from there, once you decide whether, what, I want to use stocks, I want to use index funds, mutual funds, however you want to actually have where your investment management preferences are. Once you do all that, then you actually pick your securities. So we actually made picking securities the fourth out of the fifth steps, because we want you to think about all the other decisions first and then get down to security. So versus a bottom-up approach where it's, well, I want to achieve X goal, what should I invest in? We want you to walk through all the things you want, all the different aspects. Okay, well, let's talk about your goal. How far away is it? How expensive is it? What type of wealth do you currently have to fund that goal? What's your ability to tolerate risk? Let's consider your investment management preferences. So it's really about driving down to that point where I said before, I mean, there literally is over 30,000 stocks, mutual funds, and ETFs. We want you to walk through all that process first related to your goals. So when you get to that point of selecting investments, you have a very narrow focus and you know exactly what you're looking for to achieve that goal. So you'll get there, but we want you to actually go down the path to get to that point versus just starting there, because it really is an extension of everything else versus the end goal, versus the end result of, I have this goal, I should invest in this. So we want you to walk through that PRISM process, and I think you'll find it'll give you a lot of clarity to ultimately deciding what type of investments you want to look at.
Dilbert has been very, very active, and it seems like he's excited by this process. So he's got a few comments here. He's pointing out, in retirement, you'll always have fixed costs like taxes, housing costs, groceries, utilities, and as you age, medical costs will increase. Do you want to comment on any of those thoughts here, Charles?
No, absolutely. It's absolutely, he's right. You have a lot of these costs. And one thing I will say, when you think about retirement and housing, do you realize that you might actually downsize your house? You might have a situation where you might want to think about some point where you might need assistance either in your home, or you might be moving to assisted living. So, housing obviously is a variable, but Dilbert's right. There's a lot of variables once you're in retirement that you can't predict in advance. So the best you can do is just really have an estimate. And with your goals, your goals can obviously change. The cost of your goals can change. But if you have an estimate, at least you'll get yourself somewhere in the ballpark versus trying to walk in a forest in the middle of the night without a flashlight. So PRISM, in this aspect, PRISM, if you go in that forest in the middle of the night, PRISM will give you a light to help you find the path versus walking blindly and perhaps, banging yourself right into a tree because you can't see where you're going.
You probably get this question a lot, Charles. Neil is asking, where do items like cryptocurrency, et cetera, fit into AAI's investing philosophy?
So let's say, so with Prism, we're pretty hands-off in terms of the type of investments you should actually hold in your portfolio. We'll give you a lot of guidance and give you a lot of thought about what's appropriate for you. But when you go through your risk tolerance, your asset allocation, if there's room for speculation or room for highly risky assets, then Bitcoin could have a home in Prism. It really depends on your ability to take risk and what your goals are. So we're hands off in terms of the Prism process. Bitcoin as an investment, well, I will just say it's extremely speculative. Um, for full disclosure, I bought $25 worth of Bitcoin because Venmo gave me a promotion and told me they'd give me $25 if I bought $25 worth of Bitcoin. I'm very happy to say my Bitcoin stake is now up to $32. So slowly on the right path with it. But again, we'll give you a lot of thought to go through in terms of the type of, get you thinking about the type of risk you want to handle in your portfolio and what's the appropriate level of risk is, and give you some guidance about what type of assets are appropriate for that level of risk. But then we're pretty hands off in terms of the type of investments. We do think most investors are better off, are best off trying to get the basic mix of stocks, bonds, and cash right. Even though that sounds simplistic, that's where a lot of investors really trip up, is not getting that basic allocation right. But if you have an interest in cryptocurrencies and it fits in your asset allocation, and it fits with your risk tolerance and with your preferences, it certainly can have a role within the broader PRISM framework.
We have a few more questions, and I encourage the crowd out there, please bring us your questions. There's not a bad question out there. Charles is willing to answer just about anything. Next question here is from Michael. He is asking, he wants some clarification. Are you saying that we can update our goals along the way?
Absolutely. In fact, the PRISM process itself is actually designed to be a living document. So it's not something you write, it's chiseled in stone, you can never change it. It's actually designed to be a living process. So as your goals change, you should reevaluate things. And perhaps you wanted to pay for a child's or grandchild's college education, and if all of a sudden your family's blessed with a second child, well, that might change your goals. You might have to start thinking about helping two kids out versus just one. So, and there's obviously things that might happen in your life that might change. Maybe something positive, you have an influx of wealth. Unfortunately, maybe something negative happens, maybe a change in your health status. So yes, we actually want you to update PRISM, your wealth building process, as your life changes. And your goals, absolutely your goals, if your goals change, you should actually go back to step number one and then figure out what implication that change in step number one has for the rest of your wealth building process.
And Charles, a lot of the questions here I'm seeing, it struck me that some of this material has been covered before. So the predecessor to the PRISM wealth building process was the individual investor wealth building process. Do you find any of the material that you wrote there still relevant, still helpful for this, for people using PRISM?
Yeah, absolutely. This has really been an evolution. So we kind of laid a foundation early on last year. Now we're building on it. So um, as I build out Academy, I can tell you I have a huge outline, and I actually went back and looked at stuff I wrote previously as I created this outline. So we're actually taking what we've done. There will be some things where we tweaked and revised a little bit, but we're actually building on what we've done so far. So it's really a process. As we go into it more, we think about it more, we evolve it more. Everything we wrote before still applies, but we're obviously adding to it, going into more detail. And yeah, there'll be some small things where we kind of make some small modifications. Even the steps themselves, we've kind of revised them a little bit with time to really hone them down. But everything is cumulative. One thing's being built on top of the other.
Mark's question is, where does asset location fit into the PRISM process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so for those things, we're actually going to include some addendums. So we'll have the 5 steps, the 5 key steps that apply to things. But my goal is once we're done with this, then we'll start doing some addendums, things you want to think about. And asset location is certainly well, it's going to be one of those addendums. And for those of you unfamiliar with the term, asset location really refers to where you locate your assets. So asset allocation is what types of investments are you going to hold? Location is where are you going to hold it? So are you going to hold certain investments in a taxable account, or are you going to hold certain investments in a tax preferred account, such as an IRA, a Roth IRA, a 401k? And the whole concept of asset allocation is to take advantage of the tax law. So your investments that are less tax friendly, say corporate bonds, maybe you're following a more aggressive trading strategy where you have a lot of short-term gains. Those should be held or be done in tax preferred accounts such as Roth IRAs or traditional IRAs where you don't have the tax impact, versus things like index funds, muni bonds, where they're very tax friendly. Those you want to hold in a taxable account. So they are important, but for things like that, we're actually going to have addendums where you can add it to it, and really, because they fall outside these 5 key steps that we want people to really think through. So really important, but I guess you could say we're going to have the 5 steps, and then we're going to say, here's some other things that are really important that you might want to add depending on your situation, and how your accounts are set up, and what considerations related to your wealth management that you might want to consider.
Great. William's question is, will there be any methodologies for selecting stocks, bonds, and mutual funds?
The answer is yes, and I did cover it earlier this year in the journal as well. If you look back a few issues, I actually went to stocks and I talked about considerations for growth investing, for value investing. So you can actually find guidelines into that, and I'll go in more to it when I get to step 4. At AAII, we do tend to favor small cap value, because historically that's what's worked the best over the long term. That's where you've seen the highest returns. But we know AI members have a variety of trading strategies, and there's some studies that suggest that whether you're a growth investor or whether you're a value investor actually gets formed early on in life, from birth and what you experience, in your early stages of life. So PRISM is really adaptable. So if you're a diehard small cap value investor, you really follow a shadow stock portfolio, that can fit into PRISM. If you're someone who uses technical analysis, that can fit into PRISM. So PRISM itself is a framework, and you can use the investing style of your choice in it. But we will get into it when we get to step 4, talking about some considerations for different styles of investing.
I'm going to answer this next question here. This is from Margaret, and I think a few others asked the question. Is PRISM included in the cost of membership, or is there an extra charge? No, this is a member benefit that we've created for you. This is part of our mission to educate individual investors. As I mentioned in my piece about community, if the AAII Journal was education, PRISM is a framework that allows you to apply the education. So they go hand in hand along with all the other education that we provide, no extra charge. Stephen is asking, how many lessons over what period of time, Charles?
So there's going to be five courses, 5 steps. And so the number of lessons for each step's going to vary. I'm still building out all the lessons for each course. So I can't give you an exact number right now. I am being conscious in terms of the length of the videos, the amount of content, but we're going to try and make it appropriate so people really understand each component. I think for lesson 1, I believe we did a total of 7 for the first course for step 1. 2, I'm still working on it right now, so I can't give you an exact number, but it will vary, but I can't imagine a situation where you get to a certain step and there's going to be 20 lessons. We're not going to, I am going to edit myself. We're going to be conscious that help people continuously moving forward. But I think overall, I think when you look at going through the whole academy, I would say probably about 5 to 6 months or so is a ballpark number about how long it's going to take to get from step 1 all the way through step 5. And then, as I said, once we get through step 5, we're going to continue creating new content after that. So in terms of addendums, maybe additional looks at different steps, depending on feedback we get from members. But for right now, that'll lead, initially, I would probably plan about 5 to 6 months. The actual time frame will depend as we fully develop out each course, what we think is appropriate and what we think actually needs explaining and what seems to be a reasonable pace for members to go through.
Yeah, and we had mentioned that there is a release schedule for all of these steps, and as well as all of the lessons. Catherine here had the question of, can the lessons be started at any time?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we're starting this off, so everyone's going to get to see us build it and walk and go through it. But if you wanted to say, wait a month and you catch up on everything we've come out so far, you absolutely can. So these lessons, once they're posted, they're going to be available 24/7, and you'll be able to engage with them and watch them on your own time frame.
And that seems to be all the questions we've got, Charles. So I'd like to give you just a few minutes for the final word.
Well, thank you, Peter. I just want to thank everyone for coming. I hope you really take advantage of both community and the PRISM wealth building process. We really built this for you. We want to help members take, as Pete talked about, all the education we provide and really crystallize it into an investing plan. And then with community, we want to actually give members the chance to interact with each other. You'll see me talk about this in tomorrow's investor updates. I referenced when we have in-person events, how we used to see when it was safe to do this, we just saw members interacting in the hallways, sitting down, talking with each other. Community is really an extension of that, and really an online forum where we want members to interact, share ideas, bounce ideas, learn from each other. So we're building this for members, and we want members to take advantage of it. And we'll be engaged in both as well. So we want to, hear from you, see you enjoy it, because this we feel is a good extension, because AAII is ultimately an organization of individual investors. And so this is another avenue for individual investors to improve upon the processes and again, also have a chance to learn from one another.
And we've got a few requests, Charles, to put up that slide with the URLs, so everyone knows how to access. So, the URLs that Charles has there is aai.com/learn-and-plan. You can get to the PRISM Wealth-Building Academy by going to aai.com and then clicking on the planning tab, and you'll see a bunch of steps there in which you can start the first step that we're on, that we're currently on, and you go in there and start the course there. You could also go to the community tab as well on aai.com, or you can go directly to these URLs. So again, aai.com/learn-and-plan or community.aai.com. And so I guess we've got some upcoming webinars.
Thank you, Charles and Peter, for introducing us to the PRISM Wealth Building process. I'm sure everybody's excited to join us on step 1 within the community. I also want to thank everyone for attending tonight's webinar. Links to some of the resources discussed will be sent to your email address. We have a few webinars coming up in the next few weeks, which you can sign up for at aai.com/webinars. And our upcoming presentations include the Individual Investor Show, Wise Words from our 2021 conference speakers. I'm excited to announce that I'll be hosting this event. The II show will take place on Wednesday, October 20th at 7:30 p.m. Central. And in addition, we have the AAII Platinum Open House, which will take place on Monday, October 25th from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central. I'd like to note that this is a special date and time in contrast with other webinars we've hosted in the past. And with that, we wish you all viewing good health, good fortune, and a great evening. Thank you so much.
Take care.